Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be showing you how I did this makeup look. My goal with this look was to try and make a blue eyeshadow look a little bit more wearable. Blue eyeshadow, I've mentioned this several times before on my channel, is something that I find really hard to wear on myself, but I love blue eyeshadow. I love the way it looks on other people. But as I said, just a bit more of a challenge for me. But I really wanted to try and wear some blue eyeshadow today and attempt to make it a little bit more wearable and a little bit more approachable. So if you'd like to see my thoughts around that, how I put this look together, everything I used, and some tips for wearing blue eyeshadow, just keep on watching. I have my foundation and concealer on and I've powdered already. I'm just going to show you what I used for my base. So the main product was the Sisley Phyto Teint Nude. This is nice because it's a pretty light coverage, but it still gives a really nice texture to the skin and really evens out the skin tone. I mixed the tiniest little bit of the Chanel Green Corrector into this. I mixed it on the back of my hand, and then I mixed in some of the Auric Glow Lust as well. This has a pretty natural finish, so I wanted a little bit more glow from my all over base, so I added in the Auric Glow Lust, and that just adds the glow and a little bit more moisturization as well. And then for concealer, I used the Dior Backstage concealer. I chose that because it's a nice light tone. It's a more natural matte finish, but I often like to do that with my base. Like if my all over complexion is a little bit more glowy, I'll add a more natural or more matte concealer, or vice versa, just to kind of balance out the texture all over the skin. And then I used my Becca Light Shifter finishing powder, my favorite powder, just to set in certain areas under the eyes, the nose, a little bit on kind of the center of the forehead and along the chin. So that's where we are right now. And I wanted to do my bronzing before I deal with my hair and then move into the rest of the makeup. So I thought for bronzer, it'd be fun to use the Lisa Eldridge Elevated Glow Highlighter in the shade Solar Light. This is the second to darkest shade in her range of now 5 shades of this highlighter. And I like to use this as bronzer. I never bought it intending it to be used as highlighter because I know that it's, quite a dark shade for me. But I bought it specifically because I wanted to use it for bronzer. And it ends up being a really nice subtle bronzer. You can see when it's blended out, it doesn't look nearly as dark as when it was more concentrated on the back of my hand there, but it still gives you that kind of nice warm golden glow, and it gives a really nice texture to the skin. So I thought it would be a nice addition to this look. Where I'm doing this blue eyeshadow look, I really want to try and make the skin as nice and natural and fresh as possible. I think that tends to work best when, well, first of all, when you're trying to do a more wearable kind of everyday type of look, but especially when you're doing something that's maybe a little bit challenging on the eyes or the lips, it can be really nice to just have as kind of fresh of a base going on as possible. So I'm going to start out just by putting this where I would normally put bronzer. And I'm going to use my Katie Jane Hughes Spectrum number 5 brush. It's a synthetic fiber brush, and I especially prefer synthetic brushes for liquid products. They're great for creams as well, but especially liquids. I really like to use all synthetic for the most part. Synthetic bristles are just more resilient. They can handle that wet product, and they can also handle being washed very frequently, where brushes with natural hair, you just have to be a little bit more careful with. You definitely don't want to use dyed natural hair brushes with creams or liquids, and you just don't want to wash natural hair brushes too often in general because they're a little bit more delicate than synthetic fibers. So now that I have a very thin sheer layer of the Elevated Glow, I'm going to go in with another bronzer. I'm going to use my Salt New York Cream bronzer in the shade Light, which is right there. And for my Salt New York creams, I really love to use my Sonia G Fusion brushes. This is the classic base. Gonna take another synthetic brush. This is the Rephr 21. Again, into that salt bronzer and just do a little bit of shading around my lips. So there's my double layer of bronzer. I think again for a blue eyeshadow, which is going to be more cool toned, it's nice to kind of warm up the skin just to kind of balance out the coolness on the eyes. And that's why I wore this color of shirt as well, just to kind of contrast with the coolness of the blue. So I'm going to go deal with my hair and then I'll come back and we'll do the eyes and the rest of the face makeup. For the eyes, I'm going to be mainly using the Natasha Denona Pastel palette, at least on the lids. And probably focusing mainly on that shade Airy, but I may dip into a couple of the other shades as well. So I wanted to start out with, I think, just kind of packing that Airy shade all over my lid, and I'm going to use my Sonia G flat definer for that. Now I'm going to take my mini booster brush and I'm going into the shade Brisk right here, which is more of a pastel aqua kind of shade. So it has a little bit of green in it, which I'm hoping will help me with the blue because greens are much easier for me to wear than blues. So I'm hoping this will just kind of blend in and soften that blue a little bit, but not really change the overall tone too much. Just doing that right in the upper edge of where I had already blended the blue shade. Also kind of blending it into this, the inner crease area. And I left this little part on like the inner corner of the lid, not really the inner corner of the eye, but just that inner part of the lid. I'm going to take a smaller brush into that same aqua mint kind of shade and just fill in the color there. Now for the lower lash line, I'm not going with blue. This is one of the things that again will hopefully help this to be a little bit more wearable and suit me a little bit better. I'm going to go into my Victoria Beckham Smoky Eye Brick in the shade Signature. This is such a useful palette. I really love it. I'm going to dot in between this last brown shade here and this big kind of more cream tan type shade, just mixing those two shades together to get a little bit of a lighter brown, and then just pull this all along my lower lash line. This little palette is great because it's really neutral toned. The browns in it are not too warm and they're not too cool either, so it's a really great basic neutral brown palette. Then for the inner corner, I think I'm gonna take a bit of a risk and go with this Mint Frost shade. Again, it's more turquoisey, so it's got a little bit of that green in there to help me out. Another nice option for the inner corner would have been this peach shade in the Victoria Beckham palette. One of my favorite inner corner shades ever. And it would look really nice with the blue too, I think. Maybe I'll take a bit of that peach and just place it right there. Don't know if that's gonna do anything. It's actually darker than my skin tone, this peach shade, but I still really like it in these inner eye areas. Sometimes, well, usually actually, I find that darker shades in those areas for me tend to make my eyes look bigger and brings them a little bit closer together, which I like sometimes. Kind of gives the illusion of narrowing the bridge of my nose a little bit, which I enjoy. Okay, that's fine. I don't think it made much of a difference. Just gonna carry that shade through under the brow. Actually, you know what? I could use the help of that peachy shade under my eyes as well. I'm just gonna take a little bit of that and kind of blend it at the bottom of where that brown is. One of the main issues for me with wearing blue eyeshadow is it really emphasizes the blue and purple tones that are naturally underneath my eyes, even when I have corrector and concealer on. I do have the Becca under eye corrector on today. So my thought in adding in a little bit of that peach under the eye is just to kind of hopefully neutralize any blue or purple under the eye as well. I'm gonna do liner now. I'm gonna use my Victoria Beckham Cocoa liner just along the upper lash line, and I'll do some mascara, and then I'll come back and we'll finish up blush, highlight, and lips. Finished up my liner and mascara, and I think I still need a little bit of help with my lower lash line. I want it to be a little bit more warm and golden, so I'm gonna take another Victoria Beckham Smoky Eye Brick. This is the shade Silk, so these are all more kind of satiny, shimmery formulas in this one. And I think what I'll do is go into this shade right here. It's the more kind of yellowy gold. And just pull that along the lower lash line too. Yes, I think that's much better. So as it turns out, for me at least, it's actually better to have a little bit of a warmer color on the lower lash line rather than that neutral brown that I had before. I think it just really opens the eyes up. And a little bit of light reflection from the shimmer is nice too. Kind of softens everything and makes it a little bit brighter and lighter. Okay, now I'm ready to move on to my cheeks. So I think I'm gonna go in with another cream. I'm gonna use another Sculpt product, the peach shade of their blush. Going back in with the classic base from Sonia G. I just wiped any bronzer off. And I just take a little bit onto the brush and just kind of stamp it on first. And then blend. I've chosen the peachy blush because I don't like the way that like cooler pinks pair with blues on me. I think it has kind of like a dated look almost. It looks quite 80s and not really in a good way, and almost looks kind of cheap on me if I go too cool toned with the lips and the cheeks if I'm doing a blue eye like this. Even if I go too bright, like the peach might even be a little bit bright. And it might be better to kind of tone it down with another color. So I think I'll actually take my Patrick Ta blush. This is the shade She's Sincere. Really nice light blush. It's still peachy, but it's much more muted than the cream that I just used. So I'm gonna try throwing a little bit of that on top. Another Salt New York. This is the highlighter, their Radiant Cream Tint in the shade Pearl. Just gonna tap that onto the tops of my cheekbones. I brought out a few options for lips. I'm thinking along the same lines as the blush. I want something a little bit warmer, a little bit more muted and soft so it doesn't kind of compete with the eye. I'm gonna start out trying my Armani Lip Power in the shade 102. I think this could work really nicely because it's a nice nude light color, but it has a little bit of brown and peachiness. It also has a little bit of mauve in it. There's the Armani lip. I'm finding it a little light for this. It does darken a tiny little bit as it dries down a little bit. It loses some of its shine and reflection, but I still think it's just a little bit light. This is a very mod type look with the lip as light as this. I'm just gonna grab my Lisa Eldridge Kitten Mischief to mix in with this, and then I think we'll have a really good lip. So here's the completed look. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun doing this look. Let me know if you have any questions or comments below. I always love to see those. And if you'd like to see more from me and you haven't subscribed to my channel already, I would really love for you to do so. Thanks again so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.